Hello and welcome to Number by Color. My name is Todd, and today I want to talk to you about Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. For some reason, it's one of my favorite games in the Kingdom Hearts series. In 2010, 4 years after Kingdom Hearts 2 released on the PlayStation 2, and 1 year after 358 Days Over 2 released on the Nintendo DS, Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep released on the PlayStation Portable. Though this was the 6th game in the series, it was the 4th game to be only available on a handheld platform, and up to this point, it was arguably the best handheld entry. Even now, I would still personally put this above Dream Drop distance, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The story in Birth by Sleep is unique in a few aspects. For one, it's a prequel, and it takes place 10 years before the first Kingdom Hearts game. This means that almost none of the core characters who had been in the series up to this point show up, except for a few who were around during this time, namely King Mickey and Yen Sid. That may sound like a negative, but it actually allows the story to have its own identity, and it's not held back by trying to shoehorn characters into a story where they don't belong. A second unique trait of this story is that it's told from the perspective of 3 different protagonists, each of which has their own campaign, and you have to play through each in order to really get the full picture. That might also sound like a negative, but it's not, because each character's playthrough is only about 9 to 11 hours long, and they're all varied enough that they don't feel too repetitive, at least from a story perspective. The game starts in the Land of Departure, introducing us to 3 friends, Terra, Aqua, and Ventus, who live here and train under their master, Ericus. We learn that Terra and Aqua are about to take their Mark of Mastery exam in order to become Keyblade Masters. Before the exam begins, Ericus' old friend Master Xehanort shows up to help, but in actuality, he's only there to sow seeds of darkness. His interference in the exam causes Aqua to pass and Terra to fail. There's not much time to reflect on this outcome though, because shortly after, Xehanort disappears and Ericus gets a message from Yen Sid that monsters, called Unversed, have been appearing in various worlds. He tasks Terra and Aqua to travel the worlds to investigate these monsters, and to find where Xehanort went. Ventus feels left out, so he decides to leave as well, and it's from here that each of the 3 characters' stories begin. It's a little bit difficult to explain each character's story on its own because all 3 characters run into each other at different points over the course of their stories, but I can give some broad strokes about what's happening here. Terra is searching for Xehanort and trying to battle his own darkness that exists inside himself. Ventus is looking for Terra, but he keeps running into a strange man named Vanitas, who seems interested only in fighting Ventus. Aqua is searching for Xehanort, but also for both Terra and Ventus, to try to get them to go home. I can't say too much more without spoiling things, but that's mostly because the largest story elements happen toward the end of each character's story, as is becoming tradition for Kingdom Hearts games. The core gameplay and combat of Birth by Sleep feels mostly similar to previous games, although the way in which attack abilities and magics work is very different. Instead of learning abilities as you level up, you now have to equip which attacks, magics, or items you want to be able to use on your command deck. When you use an equipped attack, it becomes unavailable to use again until it has cooled down. For higher strength attacks, the cooldown timer will take longer, so this adds a level of depth and strategy to planning which attacks to equip. Additionally, when the game starts, you can only equip a handful of attacks at a time, but by the end of the game, you can equip up to 8, allowing the selection of skills to be varied enough for any situation. I can't move on without briefly discussing melding. This is Birth by Sleep's system for creating new attacks and magics and learning new passive abilities. As you defeat enemies, your commands will level up, and once they are at a high enough level, you can meld 2 commands together. This will create a 3rd new command. This will usually be either magic or attack in nature, but usually it is stronger than the 2 melded commands. For example, if you combine 2 fire commands, you will create a Fire command. If you add a crystal to the mix, you will add a passive ability to the new command you create. Passive abilities include things like raising the strength of elemental attacks, increasing the number of attacks in your combos, and many more. These passive abilities are only active while the command is equipped. However, if you max out the level of the new command, that passive ability becomes permanent, and many of these abilities can even be stacked several times. Personally, the command system alone is what makes this game one of my favorites in the series. It's reminiscent of games like Final Fantasy IX, where your equipment comes with abilities that can only be used while they're equipped, unless you gain enough experience to make the ability permanent. This kind of progression system makes it fun to continuously try new commands and permutations when melding, and that keeps things fresh throughout the game. You also get a nice sense of accomplishment when you stumble upon a new combination or max out all your abilities. Apart from commands, there are several other combat mechanics that are introduced in this game, namely shot locks and dimension links. Shot locks are special skills you can use once your focus gauge fills up. Once activated, a reticle appears on the screen, locking onto any target in its scope. Once the max number of targets is selected, you can perform a special ability, ranging from several melee attacks to launching many projectiles. Shot locks can also be leveled up. Dimension links are somewhat similar to drive forms from Kingdom Hearts 2. As you progress through the game, you form connections to some of the people you meet in each world. Through dimension links, you're able to call upon their help and use their special commands and abilities. These links can also be powered up to unlock new commands and abilities. Before I move on, I do want to say that if anything I've mentioned so far about combat doesn't seem like something you're interested in, you might not enjoy this game as much as others because you'll have to do these 3 separate times, once for each character. If you don't like it for one, you definitely won't like it times 3. However, after playing through with your first character, you will probably learn which commands you like most, and you can then work to try to get them earlier the next time. So each successive playthrough does benefit from all the trial and error from the previous ones, and that makes things a lot easier to manage and takes away some of the tedium. Like Kingdom Hearts and Kingdom Hearts 2, this game has a lot of side content if that's something you're interested in. There are many minigames, including a rhythm game, racing, and even a board game. Some of these are mandatory to play at least one time, but for the most part, minigames are all optional. Some of them do have good rewards, and you'll need to do them all to get the Platinum Trophy, but mostly I didn't get too much from them, except for the arena. The arena is a really good place to level up commands and purchase rare items, but even then, it's not necessary to beat the game. It doesn't offer quite the same reward as completing the Colosseum in the first Kingdom Hearts, but it's also not completely useless. As I've said many times at this point, the sound design and music for this game are on par with the rest of the games in this series, and that is to say that they are very good. Though there are no particularly standout new pieces for me, everything fits and is used to good effect. Finally, let's talk about some trophies. The trophies in this game are probably on a level even past Chain of Memories, although I would almost still consider Chain of Memories to be worse than this game, because this game at least allows you to do multiple things at once. The biggest annoyances for you will probably be the fact that you need to 100% complete your report files with all 3 characters. The reason this is such a pain is because you even have to complete all the minigames, which can be a little time consuming and tedious. There are also difficulty-related trophies, which means you'll probably want to play the game at least twice, especially since some of the side bosses can be pretty tough. For some reason, this game stands out in my mind when I think about Kingdom Hearts as a series. I think the combination of the command system and the 3 shorter campaigns makes it feel like there's a lot here to take in, and the combat is just a lot of fun. Some people will argue that this game breaks the series with either its combat system or with the new plot elements it adds to the overarching story, but I think it does a good job with both. The gameplay is fun and satisfying, and the story is particularly important to the series as a whole. Hopefully this isn't too much of a spoiler, but the conclusion of this game's story is actually pretty sad, which is not always the norm for games like this. and I really like that about it. If you haven't played this or are trying to decide if you want to, I think you should definitely give it a shot if you're a fan of action RPGs. The brief nature of each character's story make it feel like you're getting through it quickly, and the lack of story continuation from previous games makes it easy to understand what is happening, so you won't really get lost by not knowing what's going on or who certain characters are. And you should definitely play this game if you plan on playing the rest of the games in this series, as it gives a lot of important backstory for who a lot of key players are later in the series. That's it for me today. Have you played this game? What did you think of it? Is it weird that it's one of my favorites in this series? Let me know in the comments. Remember to like this video and subscribe if you're so inclined so you can keep up with what I'm doing on this channel. You can also find me on other platforms like Twitch, where I stream every week. By the way, I usually stream all the games that I'm about to review, so if you want to see my thoughts in real time, you should come hang out on the stream. For now though, I've got to go, so until next time, farewell and have a good night.